For many people, President Trump is fulfilling some of his signature campaign promises, like withdrawing from the Iran deal, challenging China on trade, but he's also sparking turmoil and chaos with his tweets, for example, the Russia investigation, and of course, Stormy Daniels. A new Washington Post article called "Loyalty, Unease in Trump's Midwest" dives into how the president's base is reacting. The piece suggests that, quote, where voters gave President Trump a chance, some remain all in. Others have grown weary of the chaos. Washington Post reporter Dan Balz wrote the article, and he joins me now from D.C. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
So Dan, this is a very deep dive, a very long article, prints out to 79 pages, a lot of reporting here, very important reporting. What are your biggest takeaways?
A couple of takeaways. One is that this is a region of the country that elected Donald Trump president. And therefore, it's important to pay attention to what is happening to voters as the Trump presidency unfolds. The second is that while a lot of the voters who backed him in 2016 are still very much all in, as you said, that there are a number of people who are pulling back. And that I think that the Trump presidency will hang on whether those voters continue to pull back and pull all the way away and decide they can't support him in 2020, or whether he re-solidifies his support with them. And the goal of this piece was to talk to people over a long period of time to begin to understand, first, why they originally supported him and what issues they may have or not with him today.
One of the things that's really fascinating in your piece, you point out that nationally 100 counties voted Democratic in at least 5 consecutive presidential elections, and then they flipped to President Trump. Almost half of them are in 4 states in the upper Midwest: Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. What about that specific part of the country is so fascinating when it comes to this political story?
Well, I think a couple of things. One is that these are places where there are small towns that once had vibrant manufacturing operations, which saw many of those companies or plants close down or significantly downsize. People have gone through economic downsizing, if you will. I think also it is a part of the country that for many people, they feel disrespected by people on the East Coast or the West Coast or the elites, or however you want to describe it. That in one way or another, they feel as though they are not taken as seriously as that they feel they need to be or ought to be. And there is some kind of resentment toward that. And I think Trump was very effective at tapping into that. You know, his America First message on jobs, on trade, the sort of the cultural identity issues of secure borders, all of that resonated with people. But as the presidency has unfolded, and as he has been, as we know, the most disruptive president we've had in our lifetime, if not longer, there are a lot of people who find that objectionable, and they are wrestling with that trade-off. They like some of the policies, they don't like the turmoil, and that's the issue that the president is going to have to address as he goes forward.
It is interesting that you mentioned that they don't like the tweets, that they have some issues with the tweets. They think it reveals the president's volatile nature. On the other hand, I've spoken to people in parts of the country, and I haven't done near the reporting that you've done, but some of the things that I found really interesting, for example, people saying to me that, yes, President Trump sometimes bends the truth, but President Obama lied consistently. Or things that have to do with not just the tweets, but, for example, Stormy Daniels. They'll say, well, you know, the president was a private citizen before he decided to do this. He wasn't part of the Washington elites. And so it seems that in many instances, there are still some of his core supporters that are willing to stick with the president, despite some of the things that would have brought down lesser candidates, lesser presidents.
I think that's absolutely right. There is a core of support for Donald Trump that stays with him through all of the turmoil. And I think that that's likely to be the case as we head toward 2020. But there are other voters who are disturbed by those things, who are less willing to say right now, I would definitely back him in 2020, or who are more explicit about saying, as one of the people in the story said, I've been left motion sick by all the turmoil. I think those are the key voters for Donald Trump. And it's one of the reasons listening to people over a long period of time began to reveal the degree to which some were staying firmly in his camp and others were pulling back.
Some of the pushback I've seen, Dan, from the president's surrogates is that the Russia investigation does not matter to some of the individuals and some of the people that you've spoken to because they don't watch cable news or they don't tweet. In fact, I've suggested often that, and people probably on Twitter are going to be mad at me when I say this again, but I really don't, of all the friends that I've had in my life that I'm close to in my former career as a banker on Wall Street, I don't know a lot of my friends who have Twitter accounts, and if they do, they rarely use them. The people I know that have Twitter accounts are in our business. And so I wonder, did you find that they are as interested or as invested in the Russia story the way journalists are? And number one, do they look at Twitter and do they read the president's tweet on a consistent basis?
Well, I don't think we should ever mistake the Twitter universe as being a cross-section of the country. I mean, you're absolutely right about that. They hear about the president's tweets. I don't know that they always get his tweets, but they hear about the tweets because the president has an ability to amplify anything he says or does. And they on the Russia investigation, a lot of them feel, they can't follow it. The details of it escape them. They think it has gone on a very long time. Some think it is truly partisan. Others just think it's ultimately not going to prove anything one way or the other. So I think so much on that will depend on what Robert Mueller ends up saying about what he's been investigating. We don't know the answer to that, nor do they. And I think that until we get that report, we don't know how people ultimately are going to react to the Russia investigation. But there's no great enthusiasm, as I've talked to people out in the Midwest, on this investigation. They're just not paying that kind of attention. Some are, don't get me wrong. I mean, some are, but a lot are not.
Well, Dan, this is an incredible report. I'm glad you are paying attention to what people outside of New York and California and some of the other eastern and western coastal cities are thinking about. The piece, again, is on the Washington Post website. It's called Loyalty, Unease in Trump's Midwest. I urge everyone to take a look at it. Thank you, Dan. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.